Just want to remind you guys again of the conference we're putting together for January 18th, 19th, 20th. So we have Brad Jerzak confirmed. We're still working on Paul Anderson. Paul Walsh Anderson, yeah. And he's coming all the way from England, so we're just trying to see if we can get a good seat sale for him to come, because the flights are like $2,200. So he's a tall man, so I can't fly him in economy. So especially not all the way from England. So we're really excited. We're going to call it The Myth of an Angry God, and do some advertising. So just to keep it in your heads, it's definitely something, if you know people that are kind of questioning grace or want to know more, this is going to be a massive, intensive workout for the brain. So I'm sure some people will be passed out. We'll have to give them refreshments, and it's going to be an amazing debriefing. You know, the awesome thing about, we're trying to get Jeff Turner as well. The awesome thing about Jeff and Brad and myself and Paul is we've been doing this for so long now that we've walked through the dismantling of our faith, the detox, the debrief, whatever you want to call it. I think most people call it deconstruction. And it is a very painful phase, you know. It's almost like when people experience losing a loved one, and, you know, there's these phases that they go through: anger, denial, you know, rage, you know, and you really go through those, and depression and everything. And for a long time, there's just denial. Oh, this can't be right. I got to cling to my old ways. And you try to go back, and Victoria and I were just talking the other day, and once your mind has been opened and illuminated, it's impossible to go back. It's just, we've even said some days when I've been frustrated because the church hasn't grown the way I hoped. And it was hard, because in the early days, way before I came to Grace, you know, things were going well for me. You know, we were part of different ministries that were growing, and people were coming, and I was getting invited to speak all over the place, you know, and all these guys have experienced the same thing, you know. Even for those of you who saw the Carlton Pearson movie, I mean, he went from having a mega church to being nobody, and that is tough to go through, you know. Now, I didn't have that, but going through that phase where you kind of get into denial, and you go, well, maybe I'm just wrong, and maybe this can't be the way. But the longer I go down this road, and the more change that happens in my life, and more peace comes, and more healing comes, you just think, even if somehow I could prove I was wrong, I would keep doing this, because it is working, right? And the old doctrine was so dysfunctional and so damaging, both to my heart, to my mind, and actually my physical body, that how would you ever go back to inflict all that self-damage upon yourself, you know? And so the precious thing about having guys like this come in and speak is they've gone the full gamut. They've done the anger. They've done the nobody wants to hear from me. I know Brad in several of his conferences has been picketed, and people calling ahead to the pastor of the church saying, you know, we're going to picket your church, and, you know, this guy's a heretic, and on and on and on. And what's so sad is that people just don't know the history of the church. And Brad's got his PhD in early church history, so he knows. The amount of reading some of these people do is just astronomically mind-blowing. You can just tell that's an epic fail when it happens. It's like the whole camera just goes bleh. So what happened? Oh, there we go. Anyway, so I'm excited to have those guys come, because as they've already walked through that whole progression, you're starting to hear people from a healed position. For so many people that have followed me and have left our church is because I've been walking through that process. And sometimes it's been good, and sometimes it's been not pretty, and sometimes I've preached angry. And, you can only do what you can do. You can only journey where you can journey. And I've had to go through those phases just like the other guys have, because there is a revelation that happens that once you realize you've been deceived most of your life to believe that God is angry, that we're separated, that he punished Jesus instead of me, when everything I do is kind of not enough for God, or I have failed him. And when you wake up one day and go, wow, I was lied to, you're angry. You get upset because it's like, are you kidding me? But the grace, and so it becomes an oxymoron almost, because you're preaching grace very angrily. It's like you're preaching grace, but you're really mad, and so you need a lot of grace once you get grace, because you don't have a lot of grace for people that, and the fact is it's not like it happened and it's not happening anymore. People are still being indoctrinated that way. They're still being taught that way. They're still, the propaganda is still out there. And so the process has been, Lord, how do I still operate in grace and love towards these people and not just be sarcastic and snide and challenging them to debates? I'm no longer jumping on Facebook looking for fights anymore. So that's been a major progression in my life. No, I'm not saying I still don't get into debates and discussions, but I don't really go looking for it like I used to, because there's less and less to prove, and more that you're discovering about yourself, and that I just got to learn to walk out. That I'm so focused on healing right now inside of me. I don't have time to be fighting for other people, and I literally don't have the energy. Now when people kind of get on and they're like, well, this and this, I just go, yeah. I just say now, hey, it's a free country. Believe whatever you want. But I am moving into freedom. So if you want to believe God's angry and God's disappointed and he's sending a bunch of people to hell, and that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside, buddy, you just drink it whole. But I'm moving on. I used to live in that arena, and I don't want to be there anymore. So what I'm happy about is that these guys have processed for years, and through writing books and blogs and being on Facebook and being attacked, and they've been through that, and they've come through the other side. And a lot of people didn't survive it. A lot of people have gone rogue. A lot of people have become atheists. A lot of people are just too hurt. The pain was too deep. The spiritual abuse was too great. And I think they'll come around in years' times, but a lot of them have just abandoned faith altogether. But these guys, they're survivors, and there's such a beauty when you listen to them speak, and just a love of Jesus that comes out that really drew me in, listening to so many people that just had such a tenderness and a love in the way that they spoke that was undeniable. If you've ever seen the documentary Hellbound, even if you knew nothing about the subject, you can go through that documentary, and as he starts off, he interviews all the old school kind of thinkers, and then moves into the progressive teachers, and you just see the temperament of the people change. You move from angry people who are just like kind of really dialed up and upset, and then as you move into people who are teaching inclusion and teaching grace and teaching, God's universal acceptance of mankind, all you start experiencing is love and grace, and you go, oh man, I could hang out with those people. They're really sweet people. So you just see it without the intention of that being there. You just see the progression. And the doctrine speaks for itself through the fruit of the people that are teaching it. So, anyways, really excited about that. The other thing I want to tell you guys is we are going to something, as I've been praying and asking the Lord, what do you want us to do as a church? Kind of moving forward and into the next phase of our journey, and what do you have for us? And there's a lot that we've been considering, and Victoria and I have been wrestling with kind of for the last 2 years. And I remember the early days, and I think it was just Brad that was there in the earliest days, and Ryan. Yeah, sorry. You're just assumed. You're assumed. But it was just Ryan, Ashley, and Brad really way at the beginning when we were at the Lutheran church. And we had a few others that were there. I think we were friends with Myron and Tanya already at that point. And so we had so many of these encounters with the Lord when we were doing our Saturday night church. And I look back with really fond memories of those times. Patty, you came a couple times. It was when Carter was coming. And, they were so beautiful because we would do our service. And every Saturday night when we were done, we would do ministry with people. And sometimes Brad and I and Ryan we'd stay there till like 1 a.m. praying for people. And there was lots of tears cried in that place, and lots of prayer and lots of ministry. And then the sad thing is when we switched to Sunday mornings, that all stopped because it's just not convenient to pray for people after a Sunday service. People are hungry. They got lunch. Everyone kind of wants to get home. And so I have been wrestling in my spirit, just saying, well, Lord, should we move back to a Saturday where we could do that? But our lives just don't work with it anymore, where our kids are busy. Like every Saturday night, there's always stuff going on. There's always weddings going on. There's always stuff. And so we would see people in and out all the time. So what I started feeling is, well, why don't we just start doing it Sunday mornings before church, because after doesn't work. But so that's what we're going to start doing. I've talked to Ashley. She's going to be here. Ryan's going to be here. Brad's already here setting up. And so we're just going to start to open it up. If you guys ever just want to come for prayer, you just need a jump start, you're struggling with something, it's just a good time to come, and then we can just kind of minister to you. And we're just going to have some worship music playing. And again, I was considering this morning and thinking about it, and we have to be offering something more as a community than just teaching, right? It can't just be teaching. It can't just be playing a few songs, because every church is doing a few songs and doing some teaching. And for so long, I've just relied on, well, but our teaching's different, and it's good. But people didn't follow Jesus because he had wonderful teaching. He had wonderful teaching. But that's not why they followed him. Because, let me tell you, they didn't understand his teaching. People would just sit there and listen to him and like, I don't know what he's talking about, but I heard that we get healed if we come, right? And people were coming for the miraculous. People were coming to be healed. People were coming because out of him was coming the love of God. They were experiencing something, and we're still unraveling his teachings, right? So they didn't get it. The disciples didn't get it. He'd have to explain to them after. So I've been really feeling the Lord pressing on me to say, you have to open the door for people to experience me. And I was having this conversation with Jesse yesterday in the car, and I said, without experiencing God, everything else is pointless. There's no point to doing this. There is no point to the religious experience without the experience of God. You can't know God by reading a book. You just can't. And that's why we have so many Bible readers out there, so many denominations that focus on reading a book, and you won't discover that God that way. Because the people who wrote the book didn't discover God by reading the book, right? There was no book when David was around. There was no book when Moses and Abraham was around. There was no book, kind of coagulated together when Paul was writing the New Testament. He was actually writing this stuff because he had a relationship with God, because Moses had a relationship with God, because Jeremiah had a relationship with God. And all these men and the women of the Bible came to know the Spirit of God by just faith, by just speaking with him and talking to him, and David worshiping on the hills in front of a bunch of sheep. And that's what he did. And he learned God. He learned and experienced God. And so it's very difficult to theologically, and I made a real effort of it yesterday. Victoria said, "What are you doing?" And I had a big stack of books. I said, "I'm going to read," because I don't like reading theological books, but I thought, I should really do this more often than I do. And because I start and then I get really bored. So I was trying to pull all these books on Trinitarian doctrine and the new debate, and then I was reading St. John of Damascus from 1100 AD, in philosophy, prepping for an argument for Trinitarian doctrine. It's really, it was a great weekend. So I got my highlighter out, and I got my pistachios and my lemon water, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do some theology for this afternoon. And so I'm reading one page, and I'm like, oh, this is pointless, meaningless. These are just definitions. I want to get to the good stuff. And I'm like, and after about an hour, I'm like, I can't do this. I put that book down. So then I went to a more modern book because I figured, well, I'm reading a book from the 1100s, so we'll get up to the 21st century of the new debate around Trinitarianism. And I read like 2 pages, and I have no clue what these guys are talking about. It doesn't even sound like English. I should have brought it and read it to you, and maybe some of you could have figured it out. But I'm like, who is this book written to? Because I've been doing this my whole life, and I have no idea what you guys are talking about. And all I can think in my mind is if this doctrine requires this level of explanation that the upper 1% of the 1% of the Christian faithful can understand it, then it ain't true because it's too messy. And none of it has anything to do with just experiencing God. This isn't going to help the poor. This isn't going to help you if you're depressed or anxious or you're struggling or you don't know where God is in your life and you're trying to find him. How is this going to help anyone? And it's almost become an entity unto itself to try to figure out all these things. And there's so much of churchianity that is about relics, and it's about old ways, and it's about following systems and following prayers and following these kind of really in-depth teachings that have no practical application in our daily life. And so a large part of me reading that, I'm like, oh no, I'm just so bored. I just don't, this isn't alive. This feels all dead to me. So I went upstairs, I said to Victoria, I've decided that I'm just not a scholar. I've made the decision that I am no longer trying to impress myself by reading these books. I'm very proud that they sit on my shelves. It's like I got all these smart people books, up there. And I'm like, I'm never going to read those because it doesn't matter to me. I just want to know Jesus. That's it. I want to see his power move through this church and your lives as it is, and it will continue. And I want to see the power of God draw people in because they hear that there's a river of living water flowing out the doors of this place. That people go, I go to the Refuge because I get healed there. My emotions are getting healed. My mind's getting healed. My body gets healed. I feel the Spirit of God when I show up. And for so long, I've wanted people to come because we had super awesome doctrine. As a teacher, that becomes your thing. And even this morning, Ryan prayed for me, and it was just good timing because I was sitting there thinking, and when Victoria played New Wine, and he was just saying, I lay this down, and you're making new wine, and I said, Lord, I just want to lay down the desire to have a big following. I just want to, and this is a long time coming. So this morning I was like, Lord, I've been going after this. I've wanted fame. I want people to know my name related to the teaching of grace. I wanted to be the Grace City Church that everybody knew. I want it. And so that's why you get discouraged when there's not many people one week and lots of people the next week, and then my emotions go up and down depending on how many people show up. And I was saying to the Lord, I just want to love the people that are here. I just want you to pour through my words and my actions and ministering to people, that people come to experience your love, not to build a ministry. And, in your head you go, no, it's wrong to just want to build fame for yourself. And I would never confess that to anyone, except on YouTube and to you people. But other than that, this is really private stuff, so don't tell anyone. Keep it secret. But you don't want to confess that stuff. Well, I just would like to have a big church and be famous and people know who I am. Like there's that teacher of grace and be a big shot and get invited to lots of conferences. I mean, that's been my goal since I was 12. So from 12 to now, 48, it's been a long time to try to get that out of my soul. But this morning, I for the first time laid it down. So it's like because of grace, I am coming to the belief that God loves me. And I don't need to do all that to prove to him something. I don't need to do that to show myself faithful or anything. And as that has so been transforming my life, I just feel good. I just feel in a state of being healed more and more. I don't know if it's ever complete, but strong and healthy enough emotionally where I just go, I don't really care about the fame. I really don't care. If I can see the power of God just move through my life and people come here and feel loved and feel the love of God coming through me, not even that you feel I love you, but you just sense the love of God when you come here. That is my new goal. And I don't think that that's not been happening. I think there's been a progression of that happening. But how beautiful for my desires to fully get out of the way and just lay that down. I felt like that was the offering I was giving the Lord this morning in worship, just saying, I just want to really let that go now. It's not like a big emotional weeping. I'm on the floor, oh God, because it's like I'm not really giving up anything at all. It just feels like I don't need this anymore. I don't need to have it be something big or popular or famous or have lots of people know about it. I mean, I'd like lots of people to come to the conference because they're going to get some healing and ministry, but what a profound thing to happen just in worship, just because of the message of grace, just slowly, just subtly as God does things. Oh, he's just so amazing. He's so tender to us, so just surgically starts to remove things. So for those of you who are in your life and you're like, and I believe lots of you are here in different areas, but you say, well, I'm not looking enough over here. I just realized that. I'm kind of in the middle. For those of you who are in your life are just saying, I've been praying for the same thing for years. Like, I've been struggling with the same thing, and it just seems like God doesn't hear me or won't answer me, or will there be any end to this suffering, whether it's pain in your body or emotional pain or sickness or worry or fear or whatever it is. I want to reassure you that you just got to keep going. Just keep seeking the Lord, because we get this sense that God's not answering me because he doesn't care. God's not answering because he's mad. God's not answering because he's busy, right? Now, logically, you might not think that. You might not describe it to someone like that. But how many of you have ever thought that? I just think God's probably so busy with the problems of the world that my little emotional problem that I've been asking for, he just doesn't really have time. Does that cross anyone's mind? He maybe just doesn't have time for me. Maybe he forgot about me. I'm just one person on this big planet with lots of people, and boy, if you watch any of the YouTube videos on space, it's terrifying how big it is. And it only gets more terrifying the longer it goes. And you watch this stuff about superclusters and spider webs of universes, and you just go, man, we're like nothing. Like we are so tiny. So of course it's very simple that God forgot, or God's just not here, or I'm doing the wrong thing, or he's just not interested, or whatever. And all of these things that come in our minds are just all lies, because he passionately is attentive on your life. I'll give you a good example. It might not sound like a good example to you, but it's a good example. Victoria and I went to see, this is good, it's layered. I'll get to my message eventually here. I just feel casual this morning, so sorry. We went to see Bohemian Rhapsody. If you haven't seen it, it's just fantastic. Now, it was such a good experience for me because I never listened to Queen growing up because they were satanic. They even had backward masking in some of their songs. So I'd heard of them, but in the worst kind of way. I only heard about Queen in church and how evil they were and how you might be possessed by the devil if you listen to them. You could become demonized. So you tend not to want to listen to things that could demonize you because you got enough problems, right, without getting demonized. So you want to avoid that. And we'd be at functions where people would come to Jesus and they would burn their Queen records and their ACD records and Metallica records. And yeah, I know Think of the money that's been wasted at charismatic ceremonies where people are burning these records. And if some of you know his story, he was bisexual, and they bring that out in the movie quite a bit. But what I said to Victoria is, it's so amazing to me that I used to think of this as only evil, and then I sit in a movie and watch that, and I said, it's just beautiful. Like, it's just beautiful. Like his gift to write music, just out of his mind, and the tension between that group that would cause the formation of songs, and crazy songs. I mean, they did crazy things that nobody was doing. They show them experimenting, in the sound booth, trying to create new sounds. And, them all sitting in a booth going, Mamma Mia, Figaro, like who's singing this stuff? But they wanted to do like this operatic rock. And their producer was like, we're not doing that album. No one's going to like it. And the reviews were horrible when that came out. And yet it's a living legend to this day. And that movie's going to do awesome, But what was so amazing in that movie is they don't celebrate his lifestyle, They don't celebrate. They show his drunkenness and his alcohol and drug addiction, and they show how it dismantles and destroys his life, and all the parties and the debauchery and the sexual immorality that they show. And they don't get into it too much. It's not sensitive that way. But in the end, he kind of walks away from it. It's like you just see it doesn't work for him. And he comes to some resolution about that. And I said to Victoria, what so blessed me, I almost burst out into tears in the middle of the movie, because I thought how much I've changed, that I'm not just sitting here tolerating this. I think it's a beautiful life that had a beautiful gift, that had a talent of God, that brought a generation together at the Live Aid concert, and they raised millions of dollars for poverty. And I remember preaching against Live Aid when I was in my 20s. And I used to say, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to God, because that's a verse. And I was really against that, because I'm like, God doesn't get any of the glory. It's all these celebrities that are all messed up, and they all are looking good, and giving and raising money for something, and this is all wickedness. It's just painful even to talk about it, but now the Lord, shows me, he's like, no, it's all my kingdom. He said the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. When they were sacrificing people and animals, that was an abomination to me. Not their love for other people. Their love for people is the working of my spirit out into the world. This is why. Is the result of sinful living death to you? Absolutely. The movie shows that out. He ends up dying of AIDS. And I'm not saying from the sin. I'm not dealing with the sin of him, how we've all been raised. It's the sin of him being bisexual, that kills him. No, it's the stuff deep inside of him, the rejection he felt from his father, the bullying that he received, the shame and the guilt which led to an abusive lifestyle, letting men abuse him, women abuse him, alcohol abuse him, drugs abuse him, and all of that abuse in his life, I believe, cost him his life, right? So the sin isn't, again, the actions that we do, but the beliefs that we hold. It's the darkness that we believe that ends up being our destruction. So as we were walking out the movie, and this is not nearly as spectacular, but as we were walking out of the movie, I was wearing shoes, and thankfully, I decided not to have my slippers on for this outing. It was snow raining, yeah. So I have my shoes on, and I have to tie up my shoes, and so it's a bit challenging for me to get down and tie my shoes, and I'm like, I just need to put my foot up on something so I can tie my shoes. And I just turned around the corner, and there was a stack of these plastic things And I'm like, oh, perfect. I just put my foot up there and I tied my shoe. And the Lord spoke to me in that moment. He goes, if I'm leading you in this, if I'm literally guiding your steps in this to make it easier for you to tie up your shoe, what about your whole life? This is insignificant. You weren't going to curse me if you couldn't bend over and tie up your shoe. You weren't going to get really mad and have a fit over it. It was kind of inconsequential. But yet there's just even a leading there because I care even for that. I care even for that because I don't want you to go down a road, well, I don't feel good and my stomach's bloated because I ate something I shouldn't have and I'm constantly dealing with that. And where's God? And he goes, I didn't want you to go down that road, so I just provided a step for you. Because you just enjoyed that movie, and I don't want you to go down a dark road in your mind right now. I just want you to enjoy the whole experience. So right there, put your foot up there. And I know that seems silly and insignificant, but those things are powerful. Because when you know that God is there, that close to you, walking that much beside you, then why would I worry about the great, big, giant things? Like, Lord, what am I going to do for my future? How am I going to afford retirement, Lord? What am I going to do for my next job? What am I going to do in this relationship? What am I going to do about my depression? What am I going to do about my anxiety? Lord, what am I going to do about my struggle? What am I going to do about my pain? What am I going to do about my illness? What am I going to do about those things? And the Lord's like, I got it all. I got it all. Down to the things that you aren't even thinking about. In fact, there's so many things that I'm guiding in your life that you're not even aware I'm doing, that you're just enjoying and participating in. That they just happen. And the more that you lean on me, and the more that your beliefs change that I am that good, because I hear people mock all the time, and Victoria's talked about the Lord opening up parking spaces. And I mean, he's done it for me lots. I've even had fun with it. I've gone to the mall before and said, Lord, hey, I know I need the steps, but if you could open up a parking spot close, that'd be great. And I just drive around, and guy in the first parking spot comes out of the mall, and I'm like, great. And then he leaves, and I'm like, oh, see? And I just know that somewhere in that mall, the Lord's like to that guy, there's some angel somewhere going, hey, you need to get going now. You need to wrap up the shopping. One of my kids is showing up, and he's lazy. But it doesn't matter. He needs the front spot, so you have to go. But I'm not done. You're done. You're done shopping. Declined. Declined. Oh, I guess I should go. My card's not working. Did you want to say something? These aren't the shoes you're looking for. Yeah.
But we think, oh, well, that was lucky, or we just were so upset about other things that we miss it, that we miss his constant walking beside us in everything. And the beauty of when you start to look for him and you start to find him, it starts to increase your faith, and you start to
Right.
But you have to actually just take a moment and say, that was the Lord, that was him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or that encounter, or whatever it was. And so it's interesting because I was thinking about that during worship and just feeling like the Lord was saying, I'm with you constantly, but you have to learn to see me.
That's right.
Learn to see all the goodness around you,
Yeah.
everything that I'm doing.
So this is part of Romans 12:2 that we're, been on it for 3 weeks. And we're not done. And it's one verse. But it's so packed, and it's so powerful, and it's exactly what Victoria is saying. Do not be conformed to this age we're talking about. Don't be assimilated into the thinking of this age, but be transformed. The word is metamorphosized by the renewing of your mind. And so part of the renewing of the mind is to look for God. Because people can say, oh, Matt, that's just silly. Those plastic things were just there. You saw it. You thought, hey, I could put my foot up. Sure, you can absolutely think that. And I talk to people all the time. They're like, no, God doesn't heal today. Cancer just goes into remission. Sure, okay. I know, and the planet just spins all by itself too because of gravity. Who made gravity? You see, it's just not the whole story. And you can choose to believe it that way. You can choose to look at it that cancer doesn't get healed, it goes into remission. But thank God it goes into remission. Thank God that flukily happens sometimes. I'm glad that we get lucky enough that sometimes that accidentally happens because of a big fluke. I love this funny video on YouTube. There's this guy, I think he's an Aussie guy, and his wife is just at the end of her rope with him. He's like video gaming or something, and she's like, I cannot take it anymore. I mean, it's just, there's just so much to be done around here, and I got laundry piling up, and the dishes, and like, I need you to step up. And she's really upset with them. And he goes, whoa, honey, like, you just got to relax. He said, I didn't want to tell you this because I didn't want you to think I was crazy, but, like, it's really amazing, actually. He goes, like, let me show you. He grabs his laundry basket, and he goes, if I just leave this here, and I just go play my game, I come back like a few hours later, and it's like all folded. Like, I know you think I'm crazy, but it even happens in the kitchen. Like, I can make a huge mess, and I leave and he goes, I haven't said anything. This has been going on for years. And she's just looking at him like, I married the stupidest man on the face of the earth. He's like, isn't it amazing? He goes, like, somebody is watching out for us. So I don't know what it is, but it takes care of everything I need. I literally have to do nothing, he said. She leaves him. She storms out. And I thought, in so many ways, that's our walk with the Lord. We're like, it's amazing how that just all worked out. But the beauty is that when you transform your mind, when you metamorphosize your mind by it being renewed, by being in His presence, because when you get into God's presence, you start to get a feel of how much He loves you. And when you start to get an understanding of how much He loves you, then you start to see those things as His hand in your life. Because you're like, wow, God, you did that. And wow, God, you did that. And the more that you start to see it, and the more you start, because I want you to imagine this comedic video. He thinks that it's all just been magically done. He is not attributing anything to his wife. Now, he might have all sorts of bad thoughts about his wife. Like, she's not doing much around here either. Good thing we have this fairy doing it. But as he would recognize, or if he came to recognize that she was doing all the work, what do you think that would do for the relationship? It would certainly make it better for her, from her side. But if he started to recognize, you've been loving me all this time and I've been a schmuck, like I've just been a schmuck doing nothing, and you've said nothing about it. You've just done all of this for me. That's grace. God, you've just been doing all this for me. You've just been loving me, and I haven't been doing nothing. I haven't been following you. I haven't come to worship you. I don't pray. I don't seek your face, and you've been covering for me. Man, what would it be like if I understood that? What would it be like in his relationship if he started to understand that, and they started to come together on things? Well, because he might secretly think it's really sad she never spends any time with me. Why? Well, she's so busy running around. But if there was this joining, if there was this understanding, this agreement that you know what, I can do some of this. Like, I just so appreciate everything you've been doing for me, and I could give back a little bit. And then he would really see, and as he began to see her love for him, it makes him want to lay down his life. It makes him want to respond. And this is what religion just doesn't encapsulate, that it's not about duty, it's a response. You know, I love God because he first loved me. He first showed me and taught me and instructed me in the ways of love, and therefore I love. And this is how we become transformed. This is how we become renewed. It changes our perspective, and we know that God is walking that close. Then we start to trust that he's got the big picture. And I know, and back to the things that we struggle with and the problems that we have, and why I can say that you can trust God is because, listen, God cannot take it all off in one shot. You're like an onion, and he's trying to get to some of the core things that are a problem. And God can't just do the whole thing at once. You wouldn't survive the extraction. You wouldn't survive it. So he has to do it slowly, and he has to do it subtly, and he has to change the way you're thinking and you're believing. And beliefs that we have are layered upon other beliefs, layered upon other beliefs. I see this often. I'll end with this. I see this often when I talking to people online who come from Pentecostal or evangelical background and in the old way of thinking, and I'll make some comment, and they're like, "Whoa, what do you mean by saying that? Are you saying that not everyone goes to hell?" And you just go, "Oh, I don't. Where do I start?" Because their statement. So by saying that, you're just saying not everyone who doesn't believe in Jesus goes to hell. I'm like, no, I'm saying there's not even a hell. Like, what? You know? Yes. So there's no justice of God? No. There's justice. It's just against the sin, not against the person. What? Well, that'll change everything. What about Revelation when God comes back with all the, fire-breathing dragons to kill everyone? It's like, yeah, that's not happening. What? Well, it has to happen. They didn't believe in Jesus. God poured his wrath out there instead of on the people. Yeah, that didn't happen like that. What? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like a layer upon layer, and their mind is exploding, and they're like, holy cow, man. Like, you're not even talking about Christianity. And you're like, no, yeah, that's the next thing. The whole thing for you, buddy, it's like a lie. The whole thing's been a sham. The whole thing's been a faith in an angry God who doesn't exist. What? You see, like, when I run into people like that, it's so much for them. There's sometimes I go for coffee with people, and I only get partway into just talking about hell, and I'm like, okay, that's probably enough for today, because after this, I can see the blood coming out of your ears. It's like your brain's melting. Your head got a bit smaller during our conversation. And it's so much. And they just have 100 questions. Like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I had a guy say to me this after a long conversation. We had 2 coffees, and I've said this to you guys before, I'm sure. But he said to me, Matt, I'm just scared that you're just cheapening the gospel by just saying everyone can get in. He said, I just feel that you're making the gospel cheap. And it was such a moment with the Lord in an IHOP, which the Lord meets me there so often. Yeah, International House of Prayer, that's the name. And I just felt this moment. It was like being in a movie, and the line was perfect. And this is how the Lord shows up, and that He's with you and behind it. And I said to him, buddy, I'm not trying to make the gospel cheap. I'm trying to make it free. And he was like, yeah, and that was it. There was no response, And I just knew that was the wisdom of God. We're not trying to make it cheap. The church is trying to make it expensive. We're trying to make it free. You didn't earn it. You can't do it. You don't deserve it. It's just a free gift. And just because he loves you, that's it. Yeah, but shouldn't I have to? No. But I'll tell you what, hang on for the ride, because the more you believe you didn't earn it, see, and this is the whole problem. When you feel you earn it, then you feel you're getting paid wages that you deserve. So then when good stuff happens to you, you're like, well, I kind of deserve this, you know. But the downside of that is when things go bad, you go, well, I guess I'm getting what I deserve too. I don't deserve that blessing. I don't deserve a good job. I don't deserve to be healthy. I don't deserve to be thin. I don't deserve to be happy. I don't deserve to not be anxious. I don't deserve to not be in pain. We've all thought those thoughts in a myriad of different ways. But as we press in, and this is God's call through Paul to us to saying, come and be renewed in your mind. And the only way you're going to do that is not by sitting in front of a YouTube video watching positive affirmation clips. Now, it could help. I'm not saying it has no effect, but you could do that for hours, or you could go put on some worship music, lose yourself in worship, lay on the floor, stretch out your hands. There's a reason we do these actions, because they are actions of humility. There's a reason we lift our hands. You know, we're not doing it to get exercise first thing in Sunday morning to get the blood flowing so our brains work so we receive the sermon. That's not why we do it. We raise our hands before the Lord as an act of humility to say, I need you, lift me up, pick me up, just like little kids do. And Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you can't enter kingdom things. There is a requirement in coming into the presence of God that requires some humility. And it's hard for lots of us, because we want to stand there and just go, well, yeah, I'll just believe it in my heart. And the Lord goes, no, you give me some outward expression of this. Just open yourself up, because it's an amazing thing. I don't know if this is true. Brad will correct me later if it's wrong, because he's always like, I was listening to some person talk on psychology and the brain and how the brain elasticity works, and they were saying that your brain has a hard time determining the difference between things that you think and things that are actually real, because it interprets it similarly. And so the problem, or the benefit into worship is, when you raise your hands to the Lord and your brain's aware that you are lifting up your hands as if to be picked up and to be held, then it has an anticipation of such a thing. And that, in a way, opens up your heart and your mind to God actually coming and picking you up. There is a beauty to walking with the Lord that requires humility. This is why the Bible says that God gives grace to the humble, but he resists the proud. And it's not like God's going, you're proud, get out. It's not that kind of resistance. It's that his very love resists proud people, because you have to come on your knees to the Lord, knowing that it's not you, that you cannot, that it is his righteousness, it is not yours. And when you get that, and the reason you need to get that is because it's the only thing that will set you free. As long as you think it's you and your effort and what you bring to the table and how hard you got to work at it, you won't ever get there. It is in a letting go to say it doesn't matter. Sorry, this is the end. I was getting ready this morning, and again, my old thinking said, oh, Lord, I haven't, prayed enough this week. I only really got away with you one time and did a bunch of prayer and worship, and I talked to the Lord through the day, but just these special moments when I get alone with him. I'm like, so I don't know what I'm expecting, and I'm feeling discouraged this morning, and I just felt the Lord arrest my heart and say, why do you put any attribute to that? You're talking to me now. Yesterday didn't happen. Today is the reality. Ask me to fill you today. Ask me to be with you today. Ask me to encourage your heart today. You just have today. Tomorrow's gone. Don't worry about it. You didn't. You were busy. You're dealing with the kids. Victoria wasn't well. You're dealing with things. You're dealing with work, business, and trying to do church. Like, quit beating yourself up. Quit worrying about it. Quit being upset about it. Quit judging yourself. You judge yourself. Stop judging yourself. Just be here in this moment. And look at you. You're asking me. Thousands of pastors aren't even asking me Sunday morning. They just go do their job. But you're asking. That's great. That's like a mile ahead of everyone else. So here we are. So just enjoy the moment. Just talk to me. Just share. Just pray. Just come worship. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Doesn't matter. I'm with you. I'm with you on the days you're not praying and the days you do. I'm with you when you don't see and when you see. I'm cleaning your laundry whether you know about it or not, and you think the fairies did it. In our house, fairies do it, though. That does happen. I've really identified with that guy.